Casser-Jayne, and welcome to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, where, along with my partner in politics, veteran White House correspondent, and Time and Newsweek alum Matthew Cooper, we slice and dice all things politics, and some days, our lawmakers too. Before we get started, the Halli Casser-Jayne Show podcast is always available at HalliCasser-Jayne.com and wherever you most like to listen to your podcasts. And be sure to follow me on Twitter at Halli Show Quotes. Now, on this week's episode of the Halli Casser-Jayne Show podcast, it's Spicy Biden, Vlad Putin, and my exasperation. Oh my, do we have a show for you. When joining me at my table this week on the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, as I said, is my partner in politics, Matt Cooper, and in our second half hour, my friend and Putin expert, Franz Sedelmeyer. So, let's get started. It's Halli and Matt time. Here we go. Matt, before we start, I just want to take a minute to acknowledge something, a very sad fact, and that's that 600,000 are dead in America from COVID this week. It's unbelievable. You just can't wrap your head around it. I bring it up to acknowledge that and also to make an appeal, because there are a lot of people, the GQP as I call them, and the African American community who are bucking getting the vaccination. If they don't get it, you and I are in trouble. There's a new variant that's 60% more lethal than the current, and they know already that the Moderna and the other one, whatever it's called, are not, with one shot, going to stop you from dying from COVID. So come on, folks, let's do that. Let's get vaccinated, everybody. That's my PSA. That said, some good news just came out of the Supreme Court.
Yes.
Obamacare. They dismissed the challenge, and it's a go.
Yes,
right?
7-2.
Alito and Gorsuch. And
Kavanaugh and Barrett.
No, Alito and Gorsuch weren't they? They descended.
Oh, they were descended. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So, anyway,
It wasn't Alito and Thomas.
No, that surprised me. It was Alito and Gorsuch. So, that looks like it's a permanent fixture in America, and maybe will lead to even better, more comprehensive health care. Okay. Briefly, I want to talk to you about the summit. How did Joe do?
Well, I think fine. I mean, the allies seem happy. I think he delivered an important message about unity with the allies to the allies. I think the bilaterals went well with the British, which are important because we need to get things on a sound footing after their Brexit. And, I think the Putin thing went about as well as could be expected. I mean, Putin's going to be Putin. He wasn't going to change Putin's behavior. But it sounds like he delivered the message forcefully and clearly about expectations for Moscow. And, I'd say overall it was pretty good.
I liked the way he presented himself, but then I always do. I particularly liked what happened between he and Kaitlin Collins. I'm going to call him Spicy Biden from here on in, because he let her have it. For those who don't know, she's the White House correspondent for CNN, and she just did her job. She asked a question. It may have been a stupid question, but, that's what you do. And it was after he rapped, and it was like a throwaway question. And, anybody would tell the president of the United States, don't answer, don't take the bait. But he did. But then he let her have it. And I think it was good because I think people saw a side of him that needed to be seen. Because, it counters everything the Republicans want to say about who he is. And, he's old and he's, a doddering fool and all that kind of jazz. Well, no, he's not. He's a tough cookie. And he's got a temper, apparently. Good for him. And I think it was a good moment. He apologized, and she was gracious and said, I don't need an apology. But I'm glad that moment happened. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it was fine for him. I don't think it's going to upset voters here that he was a little snippy with her. And I think it's good for both of them. It's probably good for Kaitlin Collins to look like she was so tough on Biden, and good for Biden to look a little tough on the media. So, Yeah, I think a brief kerfuffle and it worked out fine for him.
Yeah, I think so. And sometimes, that's important. And, the Republicans spent a hell of a lot of the last week just, if you read what they're writing or they're preaching on TV, it ain't nothing like the real press. And I'm talking about Fox, of course.
Now
it's like
calling the trip a total disaster, and embarrassment, and horrible.
I mean,
I'm not even sure what their argument is. I mean, not much really happened. I mean, I think Biden did as far as he.
I don't think we know yet, to be honest. I think whatever. I got the feeling that something did go on behind the scenes there. Putin looked a little bit less.
He wasn't punchy. He wasn't his usual punchy self.
Exactly. He looked like he had been beat down. But that said, I want to stick on the Republicans only because they're siding with Putin. It's come to that. How wonderful Putin is. What is going? Matt, I can't handle it. There's a theme going to come through this conversation we're having today. That's part of the theme. They're so off the rails at this point that they're like pro-Putin.
Yeah, I mean, I think exactly.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think they're seriously deranged. And hey, it's no big deal. I mean, look, they're crazy. No, I mean, it is a big deal. It's just, they're bonkers.
They are bonkers. And Tucker Carlson. Now,
well, he's got his own thing going here.
Tell us about that. Because I know you
Well, I do watch Tucker myself.
I know.
It's true.
I know.
Well, now he's pushing the line that some in the real right-wing, super right-wing press have been pushing, which is that the FBI instigated the January 6th attack on the Capitol, that they had all these informants and agents buried in with nice, normal citizens, and that they sort of incited it. And he based it on the fact that there's some subjects in the various indictments who are mentioned who did not get indicted. They're mentioned in the indictments, but they themselves were not indicted. And so Tucker is extrapolating from that they must be federal agents, and that federal agents are basically the leaders of the insurrection. It's bonkers. It's wrong. It's there was an old joke in the 30s that people at Communist Party meetings who paid their dues were the FBI agents. He's been in all kinds of different places. He started out after the attack, sort of condemning the attack. Then he saying it was bad, because even Trump had said it was bad at first. And then after encouraging it, then he moved to his position. Oh, it was just a bunch of, American citizens going to meet their congressman. What's the big deal?
Well,
now he's moved to it was an attack, but it was the FBI who led it. So,
I don't want to give Tucker Carlson a whole lot of credibility. Obviously.
No.
Okay. But that said, these people are listening to him on Fox. My theory that, Rupert Murdoch may be the most dangerous man in the world right now to democracy. I find this appalling. I really, really do. But it leads me to someplace I wanted to go with you. Last week I said the country is broken until there's a reckoning with Trump, and I still believe that. And apparently I'm not alone, because something trickling up in the zeitgeist is that both parties appear to have an investment in not going after Trump. Now I'm going to spare you all my Pelosi rant, because I did it loudly and clearly on Twitter the other day. You want to find it, go look at my thread. But I got to say, Matt, from the Mueller report, failure 1, to Trump's first impeachment, failure 2, to Trump's second impeachment, failure 3, to Trump's efforts to fix the election ongoing, failure 4, to January 6th, failure 5, and a lot of stuff coming out from the Justice Department this week, which we'll probably get on. What have they done to stop him? My voice just went up about 12 octaves.
Yeah, well, we can repeat what we've often
No, I don't
talked
think
about
this
before.
is repeating. I think this is taking it from a different thing because
But
every day something new comes out that is so egregious, that is so horrid, that is such a threat to democracy. And all we're getting out of, no, Nick, let me finish because I'm ranting. All we're getting out of everybody is, well, we're gonna maybe subpoena. We're gonna subpoena. I mean, Matt, I think we're in serious trouble here because they can't stop this guy. And even the Justice Department is looking like it's as criminally infested as everything else in this country with the Trump virus disease. It's a cancer metastasizing. And I just want to finish, and then you can have the floor for 30 minutes. Here's the deal. Greg Sargent, one of my favorite reporters and columnists from the Washington Post, agrees with me. It's a cancer metastasizing, and neither party is willing to excise it. The great and unbelievable jurist guy, what's his name? Jewish name just left me. He says it. I'll think of his name in a second. There are a lot of people starting to say, wait a minute, the Dems are the only ones who are going to stop this, and they seem neutered. So when I hear these big people coming up against this, besides myself, I get a little nervous because I think something is really not okay. Laurence Tribe. Thank you, Halli. Your brain just kicked in. He's beside himself. Okay, I'm done. Take it.
No, I mean, we've had discussions like this in the past. I mean, I don't, things you denote as failures, I don't see as failures. The House impeached him twice. That's not a failure on Pelosi's part.
They didn't get him convicted, and they didn't get Republicans to go along with it. It's a problem.
You can't get him convicted.
Well, I think she can because I think the problem is that she did this. She let them do it, but with their hands tied behind their backs.
Well, okay, so they didn't convict him in the House on sufficient charge. I mean, they didn't indict him on sufficient charges in their role as a grand jury to the Senate's jury. I guess that's a reasonable criticism. I just think you've deemed failures things where they've actually succeeded.
Well, let me ask you this. Has he still got the power?
Well, you're making it sound like it's within Pelosi's power to...
Not just Pelosi. I think Schumer is responsible. I think a lot of Democrats in general are responsible. I feel like I'm not, as I said, I am hardly alone in this. People with greater credentials than I understand that there's a political thing going on here because they don't think it behooves them for 2022 to nail him on the cross, Trump. That's what's going on here. They're punting.
Well, I think that's a fair criticism.
That's pretty severe criticism.
It is a severe criticism. I don't think impeaching him twice is a failure of leadership. I think it's actually holding the House together was pretty big accomplishment.
Well, can I give you my argument back real quick on that? Because the first time she didn't want to do it, remember? And she waited and she waited and she waited, and then she limited the accounts that they could go after him on, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I blame Pelosi only because I think that she was making a political calculation. And, I look back and I wonder what if they'd stopped him cold the first time.
Well, I guess I find this to be like, why didn't Obama have single payer? It's
it's not an unworthy conversation.
It's a fine conversation, but I think there's a strong case that she got what she could get. I mean, I'm not, Do
you think that they've done enough? Do you think that they've done enough to stop him?
No, I think they could do more now.
Okay, what could they do?
They could. Well, I think certainly the administration. We had a big piece in the Washington Monthly by Jennifer Taub, the law professor and best-selling author, and she went after the Merrick Garland Justice Department for defending Trump, defending the Justice Department position under Barr, that tried to dismiss E. Jean Carroll's
which is a horror. Every woman is freaked. Raid. Yeah, right.
And they're defending Barr's position on the propriety of this memo that the federal district court wanted them to release about the Mueller report. Anyway, they've taken a couple of effectively pro-Trump positions, not because I think Merrick Garland suddenly likes Trump, but because they're trying to preserve the institutional prerogatives of the Justice Department. But they didn't have to go down this road. And so I think things like that have been a mistake. I think there probably should be a special prosecutor just devoted to all the shit Trump did. I'm glad the states are, prosecuting Trump on a number of fronts. So, I think there's more the Democrats could do. They could probably be doing more hearings in Congress.
And they're not, and why? You don't have to answer that. It's more of a statement to me from me than it is a question to you, because I think that tells you everything that you need to know. It's concerning, Matt, because I think he's going back on the road now. He's becoming much more visible. He's going down to Mexico border with Greg Abbott, the wacko governor of Texas, and they're gonna, get money to build more wall. The wall, and there right. we can get into the Mexican border thing real quick here too while we're there. I mean, they're screaming about Biden not controlling what's going on the border, and I'm screaming, well, excuse me, but did you not spend $5 billion to build the wall to stop this? So how do you yell at Biden when you built the wall? Your wall apparently hasn't worked. I mean, the hypocrisy, and the reportage on it is terrible. Nobody says it.
Absolutely, it's nuts. And look, I don't diminish the threats to democracy or the possibility of Trump,
finishing his coup.
Serious challenge. Yeah. Look.
I'm sorry because I hear your frustration with me because I keep bringing it up, but I do think democracy's on the line. So I don't have a problem with continuing to bring it up and explore it from different angles until at such time as I start to see people do what I think needs to be done, and that is nail them to the cross. Now, I tell you, they're leaving it to New York because that's where they probably think that they're in better shape. So, and that takes the political onus off of them if New York does it. I think there's that game going on too. What about cleaning up the Justice Department? You think this is a mess?
Well, I don't think it's clean up in the sense that there are lots of Trump people there pursuing Trumpian policies. I think it was a decision on the part of the Attorney General and those around him to, conflate the Trump cases with the institutional rights of the Justice Department. I think that was a mistake, but I don't think it's a kind of cleaning up issue. I
do. Because I think that they're infiltrated and I think that they're all over the place. One guy quit because he was about to get caught last week. I forgot his name. The thing about this is this bar session thing, because we didn't discuss this, I don't think, last week, on the everybody's denying that they knew anything about what was going on and what Trump was doing within. You got any thoughts on that?
With these Trumpian efforts to get DOJ to, overturn the election.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I'm sure Barr knew about it. I'd be shocked if he didn't. I'm sure.
Well, I think it would be worse.
Yeah, I'm sure Trump picked up the phone, or Meadows picked up the phone, and went to him directly and didn't go through others. Although I think Barr was Barr out by the end of November? I forget.
Yeah, at the very end, at the very end, he brought Rosen in because Barr finally put his foot down. I mean, if you read between the...
Look, I think there's no question, Trump was trying to overturn the election, and he was going to use every tool he could to do it.
So, can I ask you a question? This is interesting to me, but if this had been anybody else, Wouldn't they have at least brought them in for questioning, like they did all the January 6th people?
I don't know about question. Yeah, I think they probably would have brought it.
It's just odd. Like I said, I mean, everybody, nobody's above the law in this country, except it appears that that's not true. For now. Everything you hear, and all of them are just walking and lying and walking.
Walking and lying and walking. I hear you.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that there's a problem there. One other point, this Democratic, the memo that Barr put out that they're trying to hide, everybody's trying to hide.
Right.
Tell us about that memo, Matt.
Well, as I understand it, it had to do with the release of the Mueller report. And, which remember was delayed for a little while. And while it was being delayed, Barr, issued his own summary of what was in the Mueller report, which was at best misleading and, suggesting that Mueller had exonerated Trump on a whole range of issues, when in fact Mueller had done no such thing. So the question in a lawsuit is what was in that memo, and should that memo be released? Barr said, well, hell no, you can't release this. It's internal work product. But the federal judge with jurisdiction over that here in Washington said, no, this looks really bad. I think you are going to have to release it. And then, that's where Merrick Garland's Justice Department said, no, we're going to keep fighting to keep this memo a secret. So that's kind of where that's at.
Right, and that's pretty awful. And that memo needs to be released in a big... And the Democrats are saying that they want it released, and they're demanding him to release it. Geez. Again, this could go on forever, and we could be 17 presidents down the road, or Trump could be back in power before anybody does anything that needs to be done. I just want to make one other point, which is, everybody's going after Trump, and Trump is the bad guy here. There's no question about it. But it's curious to me that nobody talks about the fact. So was he acting alone? What happens if you remove him? Was he a figurehead for something that Putin or Bannon or Koch or any of these crazy players were a part of? Does this actually go away? I'm just throwing that out there and leaving that for people to think about in the future, because cancer, how it is, it metastasizes, and you think you got it, and then boom, you didn't. So I thought I'd bring that up. Last night he was on Hannity. I didn't see it. Did you see it?
I heard so.
So he conceded that he lost the election?
Well, didn't hear that part.
Yeah, apparently he did say at one point, yes, I lost. I don't know. I got to go back and listen to the tape. I have to move on, but I want to talk to you about what's going on in New York since we mentioned it. I have a new friend. His name is Michael Cohn. We tweet together. He likes what I said. He wrote a tweet. He sent a tweet yesterday. And I love when an ignorant Trump sycophant chooses to ignore facts because it doesn't fit into their, and I mean your narrative. I forget who he was talking to. So here's the fact. My lies to Congress were in coordination with Donald, Ivanka, Jared, Sekulow, Lowell, Cobb, and others. Yikes. That's quite a statement. And he put it on Twitter. And I didn't get to that part in the book where he may say it yet, because I read 40 books at a time. But that's a pretty amazing statement, don't you think?
It is a remarkable statement. It's not, dissimilar to what he's been saying, but yeah.
He named names. And Abby Lowell, right? Jeez.
Yeah, that's a serious charge, saying a lawyer suborned perjury.
Right. Yeah. So let's see what happens next. All right, let's run to infrastructure and voting rights. Joe Manchin. So this morning they said Dems are eyeing a $6 trillion without Republicans on the infrastructure bill. Joe Manchin is saying maybe he would agree to 55 instead of a 60 threshold on the. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. What anything? Yeah. And you got anything there?
No, I mean, I think I'm a little more bullish on this happening than some people.
On what happening?
There being an infrastructure bill in the end.
A bipartisan one, or?
Yeah, I actually am, but I don't have a good reason to think it's just a sense. I think they're all, I think it's doable. I think it's something everyone would like to bring home.
I bet you they wouldn't. Yeah, well, we'll see what happens there. As I said, it was.
But I don't know.
The filibuster.
The safer bet is always, but sometimes they don't. So we'll just have to see. I mean, there is a threat from the left too on this bill.
Yes, big threat.
I mean, the libs are saying, if it doesn't have climate-y stuff, we're not happy. So a lot of moving parts here.
I'm fascinated to see how this one plays out, but I'm interested in the fact that Manchin is sort of hinting that maybe he's willing to move a little bit, and that would be very fascinating to me. Because if they can get Manchin to move on the filibuster, by the way, on all of this, Joe Biden will go back down in one of the great presidents the United States ever had, as far as I'm concerned, and he played it so cool.
Yeah, well,
right?
Let's see if he can reduce. They're not going to abolish it, but they could reduce.
No, he said reduce it, and that's all they need. If they can reduce it to 55, they'd be in pretty good shape, I think. Okay, I want to move on real quick. Marjorie Taylor Greene walked back her comments on the Holocaust, but don't anybody buy into that. She was told to do what she needed to do, and they sent her on a photo op to the Holocaust Museum in Washington D.C. By the way, if you've never been there, oh my God, go. But they only did that, the Republicans, because they wanted to be able to skewer Ilhan Omar, who my friend Nancy, let off the hook for her horrendous comments last week. 21 Republicans voted against giving gold medals to honor the first responders on January 6th. That is sickening. They were there to defend them.
Yes, it's stunning.
It's stunning. We got a problem. Israel, Bibi down? I'm not sure that he's still out, though.
Down, but not gone.
Not gone.
And first of all, he's squatting in that house. This is like what people worried about Trump. He wouldn't move out.
Well, he has been there for 12 years. That's,
okay, it takes a while to pack up, but come on.
It's kind of a sad story, because how much I adore him, and I really think as far as what he did for Israel particularly, in the first 8 years. Oh my God, he saved that country from, people. My cousins were afraid to go out because they'd be blown up the minute they got on a bus. He stopped all that. And he made sense. He made Israel like a normal country, so to speak, till he hooked his wagon to Trump. Really. It's hard to let go of power, though, isn't it? Apparently. Who would know? We don't have any power, you and I.
For some more than others.
Yeah. So what would I know? Your favorite person, Tom Cotton, Chinese DNA. You want to talk about that real brief? Oh, my God.
Well, Tom Cotton had some cockamamie idea the other day that the Chinese at the Beijing Winter Olympics this year are going to steal the DNA of athletes from around the world and use it to create a race of super Chinese. I don't know. It's bonkers on multiple levels. One, we wouldn't know what to do with it. It's not like you can clone a pole vaulter from the U.S. right because he left some DNA in his room.
They're crazy.
We don't quite have that technology yet.
Yeah.
Also, China has, 1,300,000,000 people. They've got a pretty big gene pool to pick from already. They're not really hurting for genes. It's so bonkers.
You think there's a virus going around the Republican Party that makes them into crazy? I mean, seriously, after a point, you have to ask yourself, what the hell? It's so off the wall.
I don't know. It is
space people, Jews. It's just not a sane one in the bunch. Weekly jobless claims rose. This is the eviction moratorium, by the way, is coming to an end in a couple of days, and in most states. And now Dems seem to be jumping on the bandwagon to end extra unemployment insurance. Not good. I wonder what happens there. Again, Dems capitulating on a Republican because Republican states have done it. I don't quite get that. I don't know. Maybe you do.
I don't think it's, well, I don't think they're doing it out of some obligation to Republicans. I think they think it's a tight labor market. A lot of places employers can't get people.
And yet the unemployment rate is going up again. It's a strange time. There's no doubt about that on that mix. But be worried, because the inflation thing, woo, man, just getting to be really pretty crazy out there when you go to purchase things. Jared Kushner got a book deal when Trump couldn't. That's interesting.
Right. Yeah, well.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, Trump.
Can he get it out before he's indicted, too?
Yeah, right. I think Trump's had a hard time with publishers in the past.
Yeah, nobody trusts him. Hunter Biden, did you see his artwork?
I've not really looked at it. I gather it's selling for a lot.
500,000 a pop, and some of it is just Paul Klee friggin' brilliant. Seriously?
Interesting.
Wait till you see it. I mean, it's odd. Some of it's not as odd as others, but there's a lot of odd. It's odd. But it's brilliant. I hope he found his niche in life. That's what I hope.
Hard to believe it would sell as well if his name was Hunter Smith, but yeah.
No. When you see it, you're going to be astonished. I mean,
I'll take a look.
No, truly a cut above. Truly a cut above. Like something I haven't seen. Unusual, different, rare.
Well, it's like with George W. Bush. I like this old painting as a...
Yeah, but he doesn't have any real talent.
Right.
This kid, Hunter has talent, serious talent. Like I'm telling you, like Paul Klee and that genre. Oh. So you'll let me know. You'll let us know what you think, darling, when you see it.
I totally am going to let you know.
Okay, I can't wait to hear it. Juneteenth is now a federal holiday. I think that's a wonderful thing. That's the day that slavery truly ended.
Yes.
That's a good place to end, unless you have something more important to say.
No, I don't. I mean,
you beat up on me this week.
I think that's a great note to end on, because it's. I think it's a great new holiday. We need more holidays. We're working too hard. I'm pro holiday.
Yeah, well, the holiday that we need is a voters' holiday.
Well, that's true. The next one should be Election Day.
Right. So thank you for beating up on me. I appreciate it. You beat the hell out of me. You do not want to hear from me.
You think I was mean?
You were mean. You were mean.
Stop.
You were condescending. You were...
I wasn't condescending.
I don't want to talk to you about Nancy Pelosi anymore.
I didn't say that.
You did.
I said we...
Do you still love me, though? But do you still love me?
Always, but my gosh, if I offended, I'm very sorry.
You didn't.
That was never my intention.
Okay, darling. So you see, folks, tune in for the next chapter of Halli and Matt next week, same time, same place. Goodbye, darling.
Goodbye.
My next guest, Franz Sedelmeyer's story, begins when he was 26 years old and traveled to St. Petersburg, Russia, and in a very short period of time built an enormously successful police supply and training company. One of his great supporters, the young deputy mayor of St. Petersburg, a former KGB lieutenant colonel, Vladimir Putin. The two young men formed a bond, and at Putin's request, Sedelmeyer created and trained the KGB's first Western-style SWAT team. Then, newly elected President Boris Yeltsin and the ambitious, political, and ruthless one-time friend Vladimir Putin, after Putin landed his first Moscow post, expropriated Franz's assets. Franz didn't take it well. He went into battle to retrieve what was his and won, but Russia refused to pay damages. Undeterred, he persevered, waging a 20-year campaign against the Kremlin and Putin. He won more than 100 court cases against the Kremlin. He foreclosed on Russian state property in Western Europe. Franz Sedelmeyer, the only individual ever to collect money from Vladimir Putin's Russia. He tells his story in Welcome to Putingrad. Let's get some insight into Putin. Let's talk with Franz Sedelmeyer. Well, my old friend Franz Sedelmeyer is back to talk to us about our favorite subject, Putin and Biden, or Biden and Putin, and their Geneva summit. So, Franz, let's start here. let me have your broad view. What was your overall take? Substance, show, what?
Well, I mean, when you look how the meeting came about, Putin had amassed troops at the borders of Ukraine. And Joe Biden went out and said, okay, let's have a summit from Joe Biden. So for Putin, in his mind, this was a sign of weakness. So when he ended up going to Geneva, he actually expected Mr. Biden to make concessions to him. Thank God that didn't happen. And that also means that the meeting per se didn't change anything. It just clarified positions everybody was aware of. So in substance and what Mr. Biden was hoping for, nobody got what they wanted.
So Republicans, and I have to talk to you, from this country on both sides of the aisle because, everything is different. You talk to one side or the other. Republicans are calling it the Biden silly summit. Do you think it was silly?
It's never silly to talk. It never is. So that part of the criticism I don't think is quite fair. On the other hand side, I think it's much better for Mr. Biden to actually use the stick he showed Putin. It's not enough to show. He has to do something. Putin only understands when things are happening. He does not understand the announcement of something in the future in case he does not do what he is expected to do.
He called the meeting, Putin, constructive. What do you think that means to him?
It means nothing.
I knew you were going to say that.
It means nothing. I mean, in Putin's shoes, Putin is trying to portray strength. That's his first and only mission, both at home and internationally. And when he's put on the spot by Mr. Biden trying to lecture him how he should behave or what is acceptable or not, Mr. Biden is actually provoking the opposite. Already today, I've read up on Reuters and other places, some of the airlines and banks are experiencing problems with their internet. So whether or not this is connected is it's possible. The timing would be impeccable. But if I were Mr. Putin, probably that would be the message I would send to Mr. Biden.
What do you think about President Biden even appearing at a summit, even if they weren't on the stage at the same time with Putin? What's the point? I really want to discuss this because I feel like in the scheme of it all, who is Putin at this point? He's got a horrible economy. It's the equivalent of our smallest state's economy, I think, which is Rhode Island. The thing that he has is his nuclear weapons. But after that, what? And why do people keep entertaining Putin, who's just another crazy thug like the rest of them, who does crazy things? I'm not so sure that he should be given the kind of credibility that having a summit with him, whether you appear with him on camera or not, affords him.
Well, I think that's an excellent point to make. Mr. Putin, and that is the mistake we all make. We think he's a very strategic person who is planning for the long run, etc., etc. I mean, he's not even a political guy. He's a stomach person, I mean, in a way, he's very similar to Mr. Trump, the way Mr. Trump sometimes behaves. I mean, he's shooting from the hip a lot. But his motivation is not politics. It's not Russian dominance or anything like that. It's more connected with the fact that he and his cronies are robbing the country blind. His motivation is money. And in order to be able to siphon off money, he needs to hold power. And that's the motivation for him, to sit as long as possible. Mr. Putin is not going anywhere anytime soon. Everything he does is to consolidate power and keep his place in history and to make sure that the gravy train never stops. That's where we are. And Mr. Biden and everybody else in the West makes the mistake to look at him as a politician first. He's a stock first, not a politician.
See, I don't think that they do that because they want to do as you say. I think that the reason that the Americans keep him, he's a wonderful boogeyman. You're only as powerful as the people who you are powerful over. And that's why I think it's fascinating to see them hold on to the boogeyman of Putin. Maybe because they're afraid to go up against Xi in China. Who's the real boogeyman here?
The economic boogeyman surely is China, no question about it. The political boogeyman is Putin. But I don't think anybody outside Russia can replace Putin or can have a regime change. That's not going to happen. It's hard enough for the opposition in Russia to survive at the moment. And don't forget, the opposition is a very small, unfortunately, a very small movement. 99% of all Russians are not going to overthrow their government. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, I'll never understand Russians. I'm half Russian.
Well,
I don't get the Russian mentality. I'm sorry. What were you saying?
I mean, she's talking to her parents, who are currently in St. Petersburg in Russia. They're visiting.
Who is this? Your wife?
They said, it's very interesting. My wife's parents. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know this. Okay.
My wife is originally from St. Petersburg in Russia.
Uh-huh.
So my in-laws now all live in, the whole family now all lives in Germany, and so my in-laws went back to visit, and one of the reports we heard back from that visit was, it's unbelievable. Most people don't even want to talk about Putin or politics or what goes right or what goes wrong. They're all indifferent. They're actually interested in not to run into any problem with the system. They can see that from Yeltsin's democracy, everything went back light years. You now have Stalin light as a political system as compared to what it was 5 or 6 or 8 years ago. This is the big difference.
Well, this I understand.
And most Russians are not,
go ahead.
And most Russians are not willing to risk their freedom and their safety just to have a regime change. It's not happening.
That's the part that fascinates me. Of course, I've never lived under that kind of rule. We may be close, but I haven't lived that. I don't understand that. I mean, I was a reporter in Salvador, Nicaragua, and places like that, and so I'm aware of but the complete lack of, they've just made these people have no backbone. There's nothing left, other, like you said, than just quietly live my life and leave me alone politically, which is kind of a sad situation. But let's go back to Biden. You and I had differing opinions a few years ago on Trump. Where are you on Trump now? I'm going to ask you this because to lead to the next question. Were you happy with how he turned out?
No, not necessarily. I mean, it's really interesting because when I talk to friends about this, on both sides of the ocean, Europe and the United States, I always say, wouldn't it be wonderful to have a person that could talk like Obama and act like Trump? Meaning that some of the things he did, actually Mr. Biden has not changed back because some of the policies are really not all that bad.
I agree.
I mean, the other thing was, which is impressing me still today, is the fact that he brought about with certain countries in Israel. And that is also something no one really talks about anymore.
You're not listening to my show, Franz. I talk about it all the time. I am with you on that. I'm sorry. All the time. I mean, there were things that he did by mistake. Good. I don't think there was great, thought or whatever. But yeah, no, I agree. I agree.
Either way, some things turn out good, and it's good for the country. And Mr. Biden, of course, many people wanted change, and the change came. And the unfortunate events we had last summer with BLM, and we had in January when you had people storm Congress, etc. I mean, these are things I never expected to see in this country. At the same time, it would be great if people would dial down again in their rhetoric and bring the country forward, instead of just looking at which political orientation or which progressive ideas or more conservative ideas everybody wants.
I don't think that's going to happen. Yeah. Go ahead, Vlad.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to happen, but I can tell you what. I mean, a great many people are really sick and tired of that game. So I think we might see some improvement in that area, at least from the electorate. from normal people.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm of the opinion that Trump has to be put in jail before any of this is cleaned up. That's my opinion, because I think that people are. It doesn't end now. I'll say that with it doesn't end, because who knows whether he's a front for something else. Steve Bannon's still out there. The Koch is still out there. All these right wing, crazy activists. Will any of that, would that end Trump? But I do think there's a certain purging that would come to the American zeitgeist if they were able to nail Trump, which is, he did some wrong things. He belongs in jail. Because in this country, unless you're... No, I was going to say, in this country, the president of the United States cannot be above the law. Can't be.
Well, and the same thing is true with other people. I don't see, my biggest thing I always look at is equal application of the law. I don't see why, people that burn buildings in the summer or people storming Congress should be treated any different.
No, I think everybody who's
way,
Well,
and
kids protesting. I was going to say kids protesting in the Black Lives Matter movement is one thing. That's protesting, and
right.
that's sad. But that's 245 years almost of repression. That's not the same as what happened at the Capitol, storming the Capitol. That was bizarre and scary, and it was led on by Trump. So, what are you going to say? I don't want to spend too much time on that. I want to talk to you about first cyber attacks and the sabotage and all of that.
Right.
How concerning is that to you? Because I know you deal in a lot of this stuff. Can they stop this, or is this just with us forever now?
Well, here's a classical scenario. You look at China doing bad things. It's all done through the government and through the, executive organs of state, military, intelligence, etc. In Russia, it's initiated by the government. It's initiated by the intelligence services, but most often it's carried out by private entities who are retained for such a purpose. And they have free reign. And for Putin to rein that in, even if he wanted to, it's going to be very hard. So having said that, together with what happened at the summit, I think that Putin is actually going to step up his game. He's going to try to do more than he did before when it comes to disrupting, because he has understood, with Mr. Biden even turning over a list with the infrastructures that should not be sabotaged per se, he has understood that it's a real concern, and if he keeps on pressing, he really has this idea that he could actually make everybody else, including the United States, submit. And this is a real issue. This is a real problem. America has the know-how. They have the means to counter that. They also have the means to nip it in the bud by doing something proactively. And unfortunately, it's not being done. Mr. Putin only understands action, does not understand a announcement of a possible consequence at a later point in time after something has happened. That's not something,
Right. Yeah, exactly.
He will only grasp as long as we do business with Russia. I'm talking commercial business with Russia. As long as we let them export their gas freely, etc., as long as we have them in the SWIFT payment system, nothing will change, because they have the financial means to keep that game up. And they've got nothing to lose. As far as they're concerned, they are in a state of war with the West. They're already in the Cold War. We're talking about it, and they're in it. And that's a big difference.
That's a tremendously big difference. But I'm curious as to what you think Biden or the United States Foreign Service and anybody, could be doing. I'm with you, because a lot of my angst right now, and Matt and I just did our segment, and I railed about Nancy Pelosi because I'm so tired of hearing the word "we will." We will subpoena. Yeah. We will. Nobody wants to do anything in this country, and it's just it's maddening to me. But I'm curious as to what you think that President Biden could do.
I think the problem is in the culture right now. No one seems to want to offend anyone. Everyone wants to appeal to the other sense of ethics, what's acceptable and not. Now, that is a game you can play in school or in church, but you can't do it
on the world stage. Yeah.
Like on the world stage. But I mean, there's enough talent, in the three-letter agencies and in your military to be able to get even with these guys overnight. And I think that is something that will happen. And the second thing I predict that will happen, some of that activity which disrupts life here in America and also in other Western countries, that should be equated to acts of terrorism. Not acts of war, but acts of terrorism, and treated accordingly. And as long as we don't do that, these people are laughing, and Putin is laughing, because there is no real consequence to it.
I thought something that happened yesterday was really fascinating. That was the moment after Biden talked to the press about what had happened in the conversation, when he went after the reporter on CNN. Okay, and I thought that was interesting. I would go so far as to say that I thought that was a very important moment. I think, and I'm glad that it happened, because I think a lot of people don't know who Joe Biden really is. Those who have dealt with him over the last 40 years know him well and know what he's capable of and know what a hard ass he can be. But he doesn't like to he doesn't like to present that side of himself to the public. He always likes to come off as thoughtful and measured. But he let it go. I'm thinking now, after Matt and I discussed this in the first half hour, but I have to say, thinking about it, I'm wondering whether it wasn't deliberate to show a side of him that I think that people need to see and they haven't seen. That he's not all, Mr. Nice Guy, which we know he's not, because you don't get to be president of the United States by being Mr. Nice Guy. But I thought it was an interesting moment in his presidency and an important moment. He apologized to the reporter and the CNN reporter, and then later she said it wasn't necessary for him to apologize. But I think he let it go, and a part of me is like, I wonder if it wasn't partially deliberate.
I mean, Mr. Biden might not be as nice as everybody believes, but he certainly has manners.
You don't like manners at all. Oh, you Germans. No manners, please. Let's move to this, because I've wanted to talk to you about this for a long time, and that's Alexei Navalny. I don't know why this case has gotten to my core, but my God, Franz, it has. This is so wrong, and so a slap in the West's face. So, it goes against every treaty and every, thing that we have between countries. What the hell? I don't even know where to start there. Talk to me.
You have, this again, I mean, the Navalny it's such a tragic situation. It's like a Russian novel.
Right?
It's like Dr. Zhivago.
It's true.
It's just sad. But at the same time, you have to understand who Navalny is. Alexei Navalny is a hard ass. And like other people I know, like, for example, Michael Khodorkovsky, he's got this ego also. You remember when Michael Khodorkovsky from Yukos was arrested and put in the Gulag for 10 years? He was not leaving Russia because he was of the opinion nobody could touch him. And when Navalny went back after his poisoning, after uncovering who did it, what a stunt it was amazing. He was of the opinion if he stayed in the West, he's going to become unimportant. And so his ego told him, I'm going back to Russia and they will not dare to arrest me. And that's exactly what happened. It's exactly what went wrong. And not only did they want to arrest him, they actually wanted to get rid of him. Stalin has a saying, he had a saying, a man, a problem, no man, no problem. And that's exactly how Putin reacted to it. And nothing better could happen than for Mr. Navalny to die of a natural cause while he's being in prison. It's no skin of Mr. Putin's nose. When he was asked if he would guarantee Mr. Navalny's safety, the fact that he will survive in prison, he of course did not do that. And this is the very worrisome part. At the same time, Navalny serves as an example to every ordinary Russian what will happen if they're trying to oppose Mr. Putin. And we are the states where they arrest people left and right, even if they just walk the street. If somebody would protest close to there, they would arrest everybody. It's like Stalin days. This did not happen 3-4 years ago, but now that's the case. They have show trials like under Stalin. And this is a very worrisome development, and we can no longer transact business, commercial business with Russia the way we have done before, because they have changed their society to the worst times. And we have not reached the end yet, unfortunately.
Right, it's not safe. But I guess with Navalny, I mean, he's such a remarkable international figure at this point, and Putin was not successful in taking him out. I think that Biden was very succinct with a dare to take him out. And I think that would be something that Biden would have to respond to if he did. So I think I think Biden has secured Navalny's life, and that Putin better pray that nothing weird happens to him, because I do think that the international community would come down on him. Putin, I mean.
I'm not so sure about that. I don't think Putin is going to accept any red lines shown up by Mr. Biden, and don't forget, Mr. Putin has experience with a Democratic president by the name of Obama.
Well, no, Biden is not Obama.
No, but what I'm saying, I'm not saying he is or he's not. I'm just saying Mr. Putin understood with the conflict in Syria that when an American Democratic president is drawing a red line into the sand, nothing will happen.
But this is what I'm saying to you. This is what I'm saying to you. That's the difference between Obama and Biden. They are not the same man. I don't think that Biden would hesitate in a second to take some kind of crazy action. I agree with you on Obama, by the way, because I wrote a book about him, when he was running, and I'm not his greatest fan, never was, and felt he was a very weak president, weak.
I mean, if I could give Mr. Biden one piece of advice, and Garry Kasparov has just done that too. And that is, they should be proactive. They should not warn Putin of consequences. They must create a consequence, which is tangible, which is touchable, which is understandable for Putin. You cannot tell the guy, I will do this. No, actually you have to go and be proactive already today. That's the language. Nothing else will work.
Well, I think that's America's biggest problem internationally, by the way, and in country. I just think that everybody's lost their nerve. They're not tough. This country has just gotten mushy. There's a word for you. I haven't used that word.
Well, when it comes to your people in the military and intelligence world, don't worry about it. They have the capabilities. And they also have the willpower of doing it if they're let off the leash, per se.
Well, this is what I'm saying. But the people who are in... Right, but Franz, the people who are in leadership, either the one to be too polite or they're too crazy and bullying like Trump. I mean, there's no happy medium where, So, if you look at... I asked myself this question. If this was 1945 or 44 and it came to having to drop the bomb to stop Japan, would would Biden have done it? Would Obama have done it? Would Bush have done it? Would Putin have done it? And when you answer that question, you kind of know where. Yeah.
I see ourselves more in a position, historically speaking, in 1939.
Yeah, well, for sure.
America tried to stay neutral, tried to keep out of conflicts of World War II, and that didn't work. I mean, the problem is if you're trying to stay too peaceful, it's only you're gonna only embolden the bad guy. That is the lesson from history, and we are actually repeating that. And we are not on a unified front. I mean, look at the European Union. They cannot make any meaningful sanctions against Russia because there's always one member in the European Union who doesn't want it.
Right. I agree.
So the the answer to Putin is too weak. So unless the United States takes the leadership and puts the foot down and really does something about it, the guy's going to be there forever. And he's going to keep us busy forever. And
This is a
enjoy doing that.
This is a very depressing conversation. Get off my phone. I was hoping for something more positive. No, it's really we live in we live in very strange times. There's no question about it, and I don't know what's going to happen here. I don't. On some days I wake up, Franz, and I say to myself, "This country is finished. It's over. It's it can't be revived." And I say that for the world too. And then others I say, well, maybe I don't know. We'll see. What didn't I ask you that you were hoping I would ask you? Because I'm looking at the clock and we got to go.
All right. Anyway, my last comment is just here, and that is about the United States. I wouldn't be also negative about it. If there is one lesson to be learned out of this Trump situation and what we have now with Joe Biden is, the population is split in two, 50-50. And one side cannot change everything for the other side. It's never going to work. So I hope the next guy who's going to be in office will understand that.
And do what? You can't. It's going to take generations to change people.
Well, then let it be a change over time. But this.
But here's
my agenda, your agenda. It's
no, of course it's not going to. I guess the only thing that I wanted to say to you on that was the problem that we have here is this authoritarianism, and certainly being a German, in that 1937 comparison, you don't have a lot of room.
Right.
You don't have a lot of room because that thing it's a virus far worse than COVID, and when it takes over, it's very, very hard to kill.
If people would be more concentrated on their freedoms instead of trying to limit everything for everybody, I think that would be one good step.
Brilliant idea. Brilliant thought. Thank you so much. It's always good to talk to you.
Halli, I had a blast. Thank you very much. You take care.
You too. I've been speaking with Franz Sedelmeyer. His book is Welcome to Putingrad. For more information on Franz Sedelmeyer and for info on how to purchase his book, visit his website at welcometoputingrad.com. Thank you for tuning in to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, a production of Resec LLC. The Halli Casser-Jayne Show posts new podcasts Wednesdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, and is available at HalliCasser-Jayne.com and on all your favorite apps. Be sure to visit us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and follow me on Twitter at The Halli CJ Show. Until next time, this is Halli Casser-Jayne.